Fire Radio.
Hey everyone, Jeremy, National Fire Radio. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, a very special guest, a gentleman that I hold in such high regard, Chief David Rhodes. Chief, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Jeremy. Good to see you again. It's been 2 whole full weeks now.
Are you, speaking of 2 full weeks, have you had some time to decompress, or are you still coming off that FDIC high?
So I was about 2 months into planning 2026 when FDIC happened.
Right.
And as soon as I got home, I had more ideas. So I won't say I killed myself the first week back, but I did work every day and got back at it. So it really never slows down.
Well, maybe a little look behind the curtain, right? I mean, the reason why I reached out right after FDIC, I wanted to get you on because I really enjoyed your message. And I think a lot of similarities between my Bridging the Gap program and what I talk about daily on the podcast. Your message knocked it out of the park, and much more articulate and well thought out than I am. And I appreciate that. So, but
I did have a 20-person production crew behind me. So.
That's true. But listen, don't take away from yourself. The delivery, it was almost like Southern Baptist preacher style. I mean, it was.
I like that.
I was watching it this morning when I came into the office, and I just wanted to kind of refresh my memory about some of the talking points and so on. So I got in early this morning. I was going through it, and Sebi walks in. He's one of my producers. He walks in and he goes, is that church? Who is that? And I go, that's Dave Rhodes. I go, he's going to be on the podcast. And I go, he's like, what? That's exactly, he's saying what you say. And I go, yeah, that's because it's the message that needs to be talked about.
Yep.
And I firmly believe that. But before we go there, give me a look behind the curtain, oh Wizard of Oz. Like, you at FDIC as the editor-in-chief, right? And the man that is emceeing and anchoring this show. And you have to not only do the production side of it, but you have to go around and shake hands, change multiple. I know Bobby Halton changed outfits throughout the day. He went from a suit to jeans to a hat, back to a suit. Like, give me a rundown. Maybe a lot of people don't truly understand what that week looks like for you. Or 2 weeks, I guess.
Yeah, I'm there about 5 days before the conference starts. So I get there like the Wednesday before, check in. Usually that first day is all errands, going to the grocery store for the room, getting the room set up, because I have meetings in the room, and a lot of people come in and out as well, some for fun and some for like business.
Sure.
And so that takes the full Wednesday, and then Thursday we start doing some meetings with mostly all the hot logistics crews and all that. And now they've been working weeks before already. So several of them have already been in town, and then I have I've got a lot of request appointments. Some are for people that want me to stop by the booth to do a shoot. Always do the NFFF NASCAR reveal.
Yep.
Some of those big ones like that. Then there's some people that I need to see about the next year to see if they want to get involved. There's podcasts. So I have a spreadsheet with a schedule, and the spreadsheet is about 7 pages long.
Who's your keeper?
Scott Isaacs.
Few?
Yeah. Scott Isaacs is an Indy guy, and he does a phenomenal job. He's about 6'7", 6'8", so you can't miss
was
him.
your security guard that day at the
he's that's what everybody says, security. I don't know that I need security so much, but what he's good is I can always find him because he's taller than anybody else. He does a good job getting me where I need to be. He also knows the facility really well, so like a lot of times if I have to be, I'm in ICC and I got to be in LOS in 15 minutes.
Right.
He knows that we need to drive around because I'm going to get stopped 25 times and be 50 minutes late. So and I'm in the zone there. I'm like, I want to talk to everybody, right?
I get it.
So he's got to kind of put his hand on my back and shove me away. And then I've got video shoots for various things. Sometimes they're daily wrap-ups. Sometimes they're some corporate videos, marketing stuff we're doing. It's wide open. I'm usually up for the buses to load Monday around 4:30, 5 o'clock. I'm over there on the sidewalk. Great. And then once the buses start on Monday morning, then it's nonstop through Saturday at about 3:00. And I've traditionally ended my time at the convention center with packing up the bookstore. And it's kind of like there's probably 15 of us.
Right.
It's the books people. I put on a t-shirt like this and a hat, and I go down there and just physical manual labor. It's kind of like sometimes you want to cut grass.
I get it. Totally get it.
After the week. And
it's
so
that
we have a good time. It's a pain to do it because you're like matching boxes and putting the books in, but it's kind of become a little tradition now for the last 3 years. And I've recruited some other folks. Stephanie White was in there with us. And so, some of our more senior like manager people get over there and get dirty for a little while to help the books team pack up. And then go out with the Indy staff, the ones that have supported Hot, the fire chief on Saturday night, and then fly home on Sunday. So
that's
it's an 11-day deal, and it's wide open from start to finish.
And here you are still decompressing, still answering emails, phone calls, text messages, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I got to think for you too, even with all the responsibility that you have, it's still, I have to believe, a recharge for you as well to get together with guys that you don't get to see. And so, I mean, that's a big part of it, right? Is like, it's the training, it's the exhibits, it's the show, it's the whole personality around it. But I find the one great thing about it is it brings us all together under one roof and one zip code where we can really network and people can find people. And that's truly, for me, the recharge that I need out of that week. And in fact, this year I scaled way back on anything we were doing. And I found myself having some free time this year, which I haven't had in years, to just walk around and shake hands and say hello to people and talk with vendors. And it was enjoyable. More enjoyable this year for me than ever.
I think this one was probably my most enjoyable too. The first one was super stressful. 3 years ago with losing Bobby and then having a short time from December to April to pull that together without him. That was pretty stressful, not really knowing the full system. And I think, the folks, all the production folks and Diane and the whole team, I don't know if it was intentional or not, but there was a lot I was sheltered from that I wasn't having to deal with. Second year, I got a little bit more behind the curtain and was like, crap, I'm behind the 8 ball. Like, I should have started planning this in January and I did it from January to April last time. I should have started in January the year before. And so I was like getting my Revolution speech ready, like up to probably 30 days before the thing. And so this year I said, all right, I'm going to have everything done by November. And so I pretty much wrote that opening piece and had it at about 80% in November, and then sort of massaged it a little bit. And, it's always good because you think, you run through it and you're like, oh, I need to say this or I need to eliminate this. And to be honest with you, I eliminated half of it because of the, time restrictions. So I did the old Stephen King model where you sit down and just write.
That's right.
And you write and then you go and then you take out and then you think, okay, people are going to remember 2 or 3 things. And then you just keep taking it down to the main points. And it winds up being a, 20-minute deal.
Yeah. Which for a 20-minute deal, it packed a punch. And, last year I had you on after FDIC and we talked about your keynote then as well, right? Your opening.
Yeah, that's right.
We're doing it again this year. And, for me, this year really resonated. The intent of your piece there was mission, service, and purpose. 3 very distinct words that I think we need to refocus on in the fire service. And your message, whether 20 minutes, but it, like I said, packed a punch. And I think many people needed to hear that. And the fact I made some notes, right? And like the one thing that stood out to me was your quote, "We are in the fire service to serve the people." And that got a round of applause. And I thought about that. And as I struggle with this whole redefining and looking for how to redefine the purpose when the purpose has never gone away. It's always been the same, right? It's service, it's life and property. And I think we have gotten away from that. And that's why I really enjoyed your message. But I'd love to kind of go down that road with you a little bit. You challenged people in this in this 20 minutes. You are, I feel, the leader in the American Fire Service, right? It's a prestigious position to be the editor-in-chief. And when you take on a responsibility like that, your voice is heard and it resonates with everyone across the board. And so when the guy that is at the head of the ship makes a comment about challenging leadership and getting back on what our purpose is for the fire service, that hits hard.
Yeah. And it's very intentional. I know I've got the platform, so I think we talked about this last time. It's a huge responsibility to have that platform, and it can easily go off the rails if you get political or if you get, off on some tangent. And so that's been sort of my grounding focus, is to stay focused on the service delivery and what we're about. And really in all three of the keynotes, you'll find some elements of that theme all the way through, just maybe in a different variation. Last year was challenging the guys to get involved.
Right.
And I think Mike Galliano called me afterwards, and he said, I hope this doesn't offend you. And it actually was probably one of the greatest compliments. He goes, a lot of people get up there and tell us what we want to hear.
Yes.
And he goes, you tell us what we need to hear.
Yeah, I love that.
And he says, and a lot of people kind of are like, shit.
There's a lot to that, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes that look in the mirror, that accountability is hard to do. And the bigger the system, I feel, the harder it is. And we have some leading departments within the country, and I look at some of the larger departments in the country, they kind of set the tone. And when you look at all these other organizations where chiefs are getting together, where conversations are happening, and the focus starts to shift. I mean, I'm looking at, I talk about our Firefighter One program and how we're really missing the boat. We're not even teaching firefighting anymore. I mean, we're not even teaching the operation of overhaul. It's a one night class that's theory instead of actually hooking, sheetrocking, pulling sills and rails. So it's frustrating for me, and I think that's why your message resonated so well this year. Was I think a lot of people are feeling that. Recruitment and retention, two very separate items. You mentioned them both, and we always talk about them with a broad stroke. We talk about them as recruitment and retention, when it should be recruitment, retention.
Yeah. It's two totally separate problems, because actually the recruitment part is probably the easier of the two today, because there's so much, and they've pulled some clips. Different people have pulled clips and made reels out of parts where I went into the whole, we don't have a recruitment and retention problem. We have a leadership problem. And so some people have commented, and it's interesting. I never respond to any comments, because you never win an argument on the internet. And it's not so much an argument as it is just, different perspectives. But I noticed one comment, somebody said, that's nice, but the reality is everybody's only chasing the money. And even if you treat them great, they're still going to leave for $4 more an hour. And I wanted to respond to the guy and say, there is a difference between treating people great and creating a purpose.
Yes.
And that's where the disconnect is. You can have great benefits and great pay, but I'm telling you, I've talked to these young folks. We've got them podcasting for us now. I talk to them all the time. I see what people talk about in their circles. Carlos who's the fire chief in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. The Florida fire chiefs put together a phenomenal document. It's like a white paper. And instead of all the chiefs getting together and saying, oh, what's the problems? And I may have talked to you about this before, but it's like, if you learned rope rescue in 1980 and you were good at it, and you get a call today, you're gonna deploy a technique that is like 4 generations out of date. It
That's
may
right.
work,
Mhm.
but we may not even have that equipment anymore.
Right.
So as a fire chief sitting in the office, no matter how hard you try, you're disconnected from the newest generation and what their values are and what their beliefs are. And so kudos to the Florida fire chiefs. They sat down with, I want to say it was like 3,000 like new 1 to 5 year people,
Right.
and talked to them.
Mm-hmm.
And they took that information. And one of the things, I mean, obviously people want to be taken care of. They want a good salary. They want benefits, but it kept resurfacing. They want purpose and they
Yes.
want culture. Culture is so powerful. It's more powerful than money. And if I've seen comments too where guys are like, at this point in my career, I'm all about whoever's going to pay me the most or whatever. And if we were to dig deep in that, maybe that person's not there for the right reason.
It's that, or it's lip service, and they truly don't believe that.
Yeah.
Because I'm a firm believer that fulfillment absolutely matters, and this younger generation is more experiential than money. And I know that just from my own children. And I talk about that in my Bridging the Gap program, where when you start looking at the generational differences, we have to understand and be able to connect with the different generations, but we have to understand from which they came. And if we don't understand what they value or put forth as important to them, we're going to lose. And that's what's happening right now. I look at so many fire companies that are recruiting right now down through the South and down in the West and Southwest. And, there's plenty of fire jobs to be had, right? And they know, and I know from the Northeast compared to the Carolinas, the pay is completely different. Obviously, the cost of living is different, but the pay scales are dramatically different, right? Yep. Where these guys might have to work 1 or 2 jobs or even 3 jobs as a firefighter to be able to make ends meet. So the pay scales are not even across the board, obviously. But my thing is, when I start looking at recruitment posters and departments that get it and departments that have great cultures, their recruitment poster will tell you flat out, we might not pay you the most, but we can give you this many fires. We go to this many wrecks. We do this kind of firefighting. We train. We do this. We challenge you with this. Like, they're painting their culture and selling their culture. And guess what? People are going. Yeah. So it is not a money issue. And I think that those that dwell on the money itself, I don't think that's a real conversation. I think it's an easy out when you're tackling a bigger conversation.
And it's a carrot for recruiting, especially somebody that's not in the business yet. It's attractive if they're deciding to come in, they're really not 100% sure why. And that was sort of the point of my message, is like, if you do recruit them, you don't want them to be like the first story I told, where it's like, I'm only here for 5 years as an experience. I'm going to go do something else after 5 years.
Yeah, it was a great story you told. Yeah.
How do you, inspire them in that short? They're coming for an experience, and maybe the pay was attractive, for them to start out in the schedule. But how do you take it has to start in recruit school, and how do you get them to the point of believing in the purpose and why they're there? And then you got them hooked for life. Another piece that came out of that Florida paper was that the departments obviously are competing with each other, but the vacancies are the vacancies, and the pool just rotates around.
Yes.
And so it's an entire industry problem. There's only so many fish in the pond.
That's right.
And you've got the bait out there, and then if you trick the fish or convince the fish to come get your bait, then how do you keep them, in your organization? And it's true for volunteer too. I mean, and I think even more so, because the culture, you're there because you want to be there, and if you don't have the right culture in the volunteer side, then people don't stay.
They're gone.
Either. They're gone. And that was the whole. I mean, what's the original New York companies and stuff. I mean, they were very independent and competitive.
That's right.
But it was the country club of that class of people.
Yes.
One class had the golf club and the swim and tennis and all, but the firehouse was the social outlet of the community for those folks. Um, and if you don't have that in your volunteer organization, you're not going to keep people either.
I'm a firm believer that volunteers will volunteer and they'll continually come out and serve, but we have to make the firehouse a priority again. Meaning we have so many opportunities in life today that if the firehouse is not at the top of the list, we're not giving them what they need. We're not respecting their time, their energy, their effort. We're not giving them the things that they need to make the firehouse a priority. They will drift away. And that's what's happening. We've lost our focus on our people. We're more worried about check boxes and other things than we are about satisfying our people and making sure. And I'm a firm believer that we'll get the recruitment, but why don't we focus on retention first? Let's fix the problems that we have in-house before we even go invite anyone to come over. And like, if your culture is broken or you're on a sinking ship, your recruitment doesn't matter, because if you get a couple people in the door, career or volunteer, it's a revolving door. They're gone because nobody wants to be on a losing team. We got to fix what's in-house first before we even think about inviting others to join our family.
And the reason we got thousands of applications for 100 positions was because our members were out there. We didn't need an office of recruitment.
That's right.
The only reason we needed the office of recruitment was to process the 1,000 applications.
Right.
They didn't go out and recruit.
Right.
Now they got to go out, and they're setting up at job fairs and all that stuff because they're really desperate. But I think that's a secondary or that's a symptom of the problem, which is the people inside the organization are not telling their friends, hey, this is a great place to work. You need to come.
Because it's not.
Right. And a lot of them are toxic, and a lot of them are, they're super, super risk averse, and they won't let folks do anything. Or their setup is that you got to come in and do the first 3 years on an ambulance and, just have your butt kicked in and never get a break instead of rotating, and having like, temporary assignments where you go to the engine for 6 months, the truck for 6 months. And then, Phoenix had that process where you owed them so many shifts on the ambulance.
Yeah.
And you could get them all knocked out in the first 3 years, or you could stagger it and take a little bit over five or 6 years. But once you hit that threshold, you didn't have to do it anymore. So, and that's another culture war that's inside is, I think fire-based EMS is one of the best ways to deliver EMS, because we're already there. The infrastructure's in, you're not dealing with private companies, but you can't just snap your fingers and make that culture overnight by taking a private company and turning them into fire employees. It's different cultures.
I think too, something else, Chief, on that, right? I was just having this conversation yesterday, and they were talking about how they're in this one department, the newer guys are getting crushed with EMS. And a lot of it is non-emergency medical. It's really transports and psych visits and things like
Lift
that.
Assist,
all that stuff, right?
Yep.
Service calls. And so I said to him, well, has your department ever explored putting on, I don't know, civilian EMS crews that can handle the non-emergency based calls? Can we look at opportunities? And this is what brings me back to where we started with all this about leadership. Do we have leaders today that are so disconnected from the trenches that they just don't get it? Or do we have leaders that just want to turn a blind eye, that are in it for themselves? Do we have leaders that are failing our people or not looking at alternatives because that's the way we've always done it? Like, where's the disconnect? Because I'll tell you, 20, 30 years ago, 30 years in the fire service, Chief, there were no leadership books and podcasts and articles to read. And today, everybody is seeking leadership information. And I'm a firm believer that the only way you become a leader is when you do it. You have to do it. You can't read about it. And I just, where's this disconnect? Why are we so focused on like the lack thereof or poor leadership?
Yeah, I think, back to the topic here, the mission has drifted fire service traditionally, I guess, and of course I'm speaking from my experience from the 80s to now. We didn't have the capacity to say no to anything. So we became the default 911 for everything other than crime. And then we're involved in that if there's injuries or things like that. But no matter what it is, a smell, a bell, an unknown, they're going to send the fire department.
Yeah.
And you're going to investigate. And then, I think the health issues really started getting big in the 90s, definitely 2000s. In Atlanta, we had one rescue per battalion, and that was a 2-person, Ron and Roy and Johnny,
yeah, right.
2-person, and they ran all the medical calls in the battalion, and the battalions had 6 stations at the time.
Right.
And so they handled the entire battalion. The engines in the trucks didn't run medical calls except for a car wreck with entrapment, or every now and then they would go to, CPR in progress as extra help.
Yeah, right.
Flip that over to today. It's tied into the whole national healthcare issue of so many people not having insurance and they're using their emergency room. And so it's 911 calls for a person who is sick and really needs to go to the doctor's office.
Right.
That's getting a $600 ambulance ride and a 4-person engine sitting on the scene for 15 to 45 minutes. And they know that we'll come, and all the way back to, I guess it was my early days in Atlanta would have been, I was at 2, so probably 1994, 95. The people that come around and inspect the engines to make sure your medical stuff, they got to check your jump box and your drugs and
accreditation.
All.
Mm-hmm.
So they would come around. They were from the state. And I think they were actually Department of Human Resources. And I asked the lady, I said, hey, I got an idea I want to run by you. What if you guys gave us a coupon book for a taxi? This was pre-Uber. And I said, if we run a call.
I love this.
And we get to there and this person needs a prescription filled, because they would call because they were out of medicine. The ambulance would take them to Grady. Grady would fill their prescription. Right. And then somehow they would get back. I don't know how. Walk or whatever. And I said, what if we gave them a voucher for a taxi ride to the pharmacy or to the doctor or whatever? And she goes, oh, we couldn't do that. People would abuse that. I said, okay. So
okay.
I said, at the time they're abusing a $300 ambulance ride.
Right.
And the thing is, they don't have a system. So and we got to look at it in the total package. Like some fire departments are getting more involved in public health. They're staffing clinics with paramedics. You've got on-call nurses that are available in the 911 center to talk to somebody and get them the help. There's matches and social services, but that stuff's hard to put together. You've got cars that are going for our frequent flyers and all. And there's some great programs out there. San Antonio's doing great stuff with that, but I guess I need to do a better job of giving those ones that are successful a bigger platform.
So we do
that through the officers meetings that we do at FDIC. We have that whole officers summit, which is like deputy level chiefs, similar to like the Metro chiefs, but it's the Metro officers, and they talk about these issues and they set their own agenda. So I think we do need to highlight the ones who are successful, similar to, I didn't name them by name, but like I said, there's a lot of departments that aren't having recruitment problems.
That's right.
Retention problems.
That's right.
And, I know a couple I can throw out there would be like the Colony, Texas. I mean, they're pulling people from all over.
Well, it starts at the top there, right?
Scott took a bold move, and he goes, you know what? People don't want to do this because they don't want to be stuck in the EMS calls forever. And so he goes, I'll just hire paramedics straight up. And guess what? It worked. He was told he was ruining the fire service. He was called by chiefs. And it's like, firefighting tactics are local, and politics are local, and culture is local. And, you figure out what works. You don't have to use the model. And, I think we got too centralized with, like, okay, all of the big executive and academic stuff is coming
Right.
out of one program in one place. And it didn't work. It didn't work. So you need to send that power back down at the local level and let
we need
fire
leaders
chiefs-
like Scott Thompson that are willing to put a target on them, though, too.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the excuse me, one of the disconnects we're having is we have leaders that are not willing to stick their neck out for their people in their department. They've lost purpose, they've lost focus, they've lost the importance of the mission, and they're not willing to find other ways to incorporate, excuse me, or deal with today's problems. And Scott Thompson puts a target on him.
Yeah.
When he's willing to step out of the norm, right? And he says, no, this is what we need to do here. I firmly believe that this is how we can get back on track. And in fact, it does, and it works. We need people to start standing up. We need people to start pushing back, and we need people to start focusing on themselves, their own department, and the culture that they have within. And you're 100% right, Chief. There are fantastic fire departments across this country that don't have a problem getting people on those trucks and in those ambulances, period.
And if you were to dig deep, you're going to find their people are their recruitment section. Whether they're 50 people or there's 500 people or 5,000, their people are bringing the people into their organization. It's not their recruitment office.
That's right. That's right.
And a poster.
How better does it get when a guy or a girl goes to a conference, whether it's a local one that you've talked about before, or even getting to FDIC, and they're breaking bread or having a conversation or sharing a pop with someone, and they're talking about how great their job is. And the other guy or girl's just standing there looking at them with big eyes like, really? Like, yes, that's recruitment 101 right there, babe. That's how it goes.
You know what was cool? I don't know if you saw them, but one I worked directly with, but there were 2 or 3 others. There were some high school programs at FDIC.
Yes.
And there was one from North Carolina, and there were a couple others from around. There's one from Tennessee. And I got to talk to one of them for probably 5-10 minutes. Those kids were so excited.
Wide-eyed
To be there.
Yeah.
And so it's like, it's not a generational issue.
No. No,
I mean,
it's not.
I mean, there may be certain things that we have to adjust, but there are people out there that want to serve. There are people that are hooked, by the big red truck, by the ladder, by the tiller, by whatever. I think, there's probably, like, my generation was Emergency, was a TV influence. And there's tons of fire shows out there. They're more soap opera like now than they are like Emergency. Emergency is still almost tactically sound today.
Right. Yeah, pretty wild, right?
If you take away the manila rope for the technical rescues and the ladder belts, I mean, they're pretty solid,
No doubt.
But there's a reason for that, because LA Fire Department was involved in the filming of every episode.
That's right.
And they had full right of refusal.
I think you're absolutely on something here. And when you think about it, I often think about when everybody comes into the fire service, whether career or volunteer, at some point you found it on your own, right? I mean, somebody might have led you there, but you decided to go through the process. You went through the initial training. You probably, I would say 9.5 out of 10 people have fallen in love with it at some point.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when you talk about that 1-year guy from your keynote this year, and he says, well, I'm here for the experience. It's our job to hook them.
Yes.
It's our job to get them to fall in love with it and let them stay in love with it. And a lot of guys and girls that have fallen in love with it are falling out of love with it. They're starting to fade into the background. And when that happens, we're failing them. them. And I mentioned Fire One earlier, but just our basic intro course to firefighting. You look at who are the people that are greeting our students, our probies. Who are our people greeting them at the entrance of the academy? Who are the people that are facilitating the introduction to your department? What type of introduction are they getting? What type of people are involved in that process? We need young, excited people that want to share this love and passion, so they come in, guns blazing on day one.
They need a keynote day one. And, you see like Miami, they always put out some good video of their recruit school. They got the guy that comes out and gives them that speech,
He's awesome.
And they need that. They need to have that day one, and they got to feel that they're a part. It can't be disorganized and, okay, what are we going to do today? Or the first person you meet is HR to fill out some forms and, make sure that this is right and your direct deposit is right, is all that. Like that can come later in the afternoon. But day one, they need to be sitting in that auditorium or out there on the drill yard and, just getting their world rocked by some motivational
You're right.
thing to tell them why they're there and what the mission is and why they're there. And then some history of the department and some of the things that they're doing. And I think, I've seen a couple of recruit schools that do this, but, we talked about lift assist and all that. And I always say, you got to be prepared. That person may not have any resources. And so you can't just get mad at it and go like, oh no, we got to go pick somebody up. You're their only like savior at that point. Do you want to try to prevent that from happening with those programs we talked about and all that? But the thing is, get those recruit classes involved in other service stuff in the community. Like my mentor, Scott Millsap, he was a real big flag person. So like Veterans Day, Memorial Day, he himself put a group together and would go out and put 3,000 flags on cemetery deals. And so you got to bring that civic duty back into it. And it's more than just, staffing a booth at a blood pressure thing at a community event, which is important too. And we, as a young, I hated some of that sometimes, you're like, oh, we got to do that. We want to be training. But if you set that tone and set that service right off the bat, then you get it ingrained in your system. And so you're looking, I want the fire service folks to be like every day. I mean, whether you're on or off duty, you're looking for an opportunity to do something. And I mentioned it, open the door for the little old lady and help her put her groceries in her car.
That's right.
Take her grocery cart back to the store or to the rack, instead of her walking across the street or whatever it is. It might be a 28-year-old mom with 4 kids, and one of them's running wild and jumping, and they got their arms full of stuff. It's just like, hey, you want me to carry one of those for you, or you want me to grab Johnny?
Yeah.
You don't want to creep them out, but like you should always be looking for there's opportunities every day. You choose to ignore them or drive by them, and you can't stop at all of them, or you'll consume yourself.
Well, and this is a big part of leadership, though, right? Because the world in which we live today, there are some generational differences, and where we are today, not just generationally, but across the board, societal, everybody's looking down. Nobody's looking up. And I think that's become a big issue in the fire service, where we're focusing more on ourselves than we are our neighbor in the mission. And when we focus on ourselves, we often will lose. We'll lose every time because we don't follow suit on what we actually stand for. And when it comes to leadership, we need our leaders to put forth that civic mindedness, right? You set the tempo. If you're that lieutenant or that captain of the company or a battalion or whatever your position is, you don't get to complain and go like, oh, it's this guy again, or, oh, we got to go on another BS service run or whatever it is, because you set that tempo. If you allow for that to fester, your guys are certainly going to take on the same mentality. We can't allow that. Good leadership instills these values into our people. We want our people to walk around with their heads up, to be aware, to understand what's around them and the people that we serve. And we have to instill that into our people.
And organizations have to adopt that. I mean, and it's, I think it's phenomenal that if you look at all the different fire service organizations and you're like, whether it's an alumni or this group or that group, um, they're still opening Fools chapters.
Right. They just
Like
opened one here in New Jersey. Another one just opened.
Another one just opened in Georgia. They just did an international one. The guys got their cards at the Fools Bash at FDIC. Right. I can't remember which country they were from, South America, I believe. But look at what they do. I mean, as an organization, what's the purpose of that organization? To make it okay to train and to go outside of your system. And it's it's basically the old Ben Franklin Junto. If you know Ben Franklin, Ben Franklin met and he met with society leaders to say, how do we make Philadelphia better?
Right.
That led to paved streets and street sweepers and just all of these things. Well, it's that on a different scale. It's like firefighters that are like into the work, they're into the training and all that. And it's saying, okay, it's okay to train. It's okay. We'll help you go to this training event. We'll help you. So instead of their focus being on how big can we grow our organization and how much money can we bring into our organization, the focus is all outward. And guess what? The members come and the dues come and the organizations grow. Nobody's making a fortune off of a Fools chapter. I can guarantee you that. No. But they are able to raise money and send people to training, send people to FDIC, send people to other conferences. So that was in the message too. It's like if we're so focused on our own grievances and our own despair, oh, poor me, look at me, they're not treating me fair, they're not doing whatever. If you flip that around, and another quote from the speech, please, as Brian Brush says, if you take care of the people and the victims, everything else will work out.
I agree. I think that we talked about, man, today is killing me. Excuse me, Chief. We talk about culture and how important culture is to the definition or defining who we are. When we put the culture first, when we put the mission first, and firemanship and firefighting is the priority and everything else is secondary to that, that is how we begin to take this back and we start to win. The focus has to be truly on who we are, period.
Yep.
And then everything else can follow. But everything has to be focused on firefighting first. And that's giving our people the tool, the equipment, the necessary training, and all opportunities that they need to be the best they can be at their jobs. Empower them to be the best they can be, and your culture will win. And those are the fire departments across this country that are succeeding every single day.
Right. And what does your organization provide for that person to make them better?
Right.
Each individual, as a company officer, as a recruit instructor, as a company officer, as a battalion chief, all the way up, what are you doing to add value other than benefits and insurance, money and insurance? What are you doing to benefit them that makes them better? Are you providing training opportunities? Are you taking advantage of their existing skills? That was one thing I asked everybody in my battalion, like, what'd you do before you came here? Whatever. You find out this dude was a software engineer. Yep. This dude designed, whatever. And then you're like, hey, we got a problem with our staffing program here. Can you look at it? And then that was the thing that frustrated me the most is we didn't allow those people to contribute because they were a firefighter or they were a driver, and that was a chief level thing. And it's like, you need to be, and the thing is, I used the term for, speaking of Brian Brush, I think he taught more classes at FDIC this year than anybody. He taught every day, Monday through Friday, at least one session. Some of them were 4 hours each. So he did 4 hours Monday, 4 hours Tuesday, hour 45 Wednesday, 8 hours Thursday, and 8 hours Friday. And I said, you are my rented mule.
Yeah.
But you know what? We want to be rented mules. That George Bernard Shaw quote, I want to be thoroughly used up at the end. the guys that have talent want to contribute. Let them freaking contribute. Don't keep them in the box.
That's right.
You know, and it's hard to manage all that. It's hard,
Well,
you know, but you got to put him on special assignment. You got to pay a little overtime for him to come in on his off day or her to come in on their off day. We do it all the time. We can do it for sexual harassment training.
That's
we
right.
can do it for whatever else. So why can't we do it for stuff that makes us better and makes our organizations better?
Check box over prioritizing what's most
There's
important.
Always a way to do it if you want.
I agree with you. I agree, but it's got to be the primary focus.
Yeah. Yeah. You can flex times. You can do it on duty. You can have stations cover other stations. There is a way to accomplish it if you want to do it instead of just saying no, because it's hard for you to manage.
Yeah. I think a big part of it too, right, with the topic of leadership, because, you know, everything comes back to it for the most part, right? I think one of the biggest issues we're having, though, are the only way in which a leader will promote their people to do more and be bigger and better is if they're comfortable in their own skills and abilities. Yeah. And what I find is we have a lot of leaders today that are intimidated, they are scared, they are unsure, lack confidence, and therefore they'll never instill confidence into their own people. And when you look at that makeup today, that I think is one thing that is really stifling growth in the fire service and turning a lot of people off. And it just comes right back around to the initial conversation, right? We need our leaders today to say yes. We don't need them to keep saying no. And the no controls the narrative, right? If we have a boss or a chief that continually says no, it's because he's controlling that narrative. He's not willing to step outside of the comfort and try something different or new. We need to instill confidence into our leaders today that it's okay to say yes and to empower their people.
Yep. You know, all of my recruits when I was a captain have gone on to at my station when I was a captain. All of them have gone on and have outranked me.
Yeah.
And, you know, over the thing. And that's what you want.
100%.
That's what you want.
That's
I said, if I'm not able to make the changes that organizationally that I think we need, but what I can do is create some people that are going to be here for a while, and hopefully they'll have more influence. And I may not see it. I'm gone, but eventually, you know, it'll take hold. You know who Chesty Puller is?
I know.
Most.
I'm going to say no.
It's the highest decorated Marine of all times.
Mm-hmm.
He had a quote at the end of his career, which I think he did 50 years in the Marine Corps. 50 years.
Wild.
He said, I fear that we are becoming overeducated and underexperienced. And so, you know, we made a turn. We made a big turn back in the late 80s, 90s, and we went from we put a priority on formal education.
Yes.
To be a leader.
Yes.
And you had some really good leaders that got passed over for promotion because they didn't have a paper. And the paper is not leadership.
No.
The paper is knowledge, and it can be a big part of your whole journey. But we screwed up when that was our only test of who could lead.
100%.
It became a paper game. And then now it's even a bigger paper game because it's easier. Like, you know, I said it, the reason those folks were at the National Fire Academy and the EFO, they were there to get the certificate because they needed it on the resume.
That's
and
right.
They know it's a closed loop. And it's like, let's look at knowledge, skill, and ability. And, you know, that's way more important than a degree, especially in something that's not even relevant, you know. But we promoted a 12-year person with a master's degree in computer engineering,
right,
over a 30-year person who had been a veteran, been in war, and could lead people.
Yes.
You know, and it's like, you can hire a business manager to run your budget. You can put people in place and assemble your team. I can't spell and punctuate worth a damn.
Right.
I'm the editor of the magazine.
Yep.
But that's not my job. My job is not to put the periods and the commas in or to manage the budget. My job is to set the tone, the editorial tone for the magazine, to review articles and say, we want to publish that. No, we're not going to publish that because that's not what we're about or whatever, and I get 5 or 6 proposals a day in a system that's a company wanting us to write about their product. Right. I mean, and there's a place for that in the business model, but like that's a whole separate thing. But I've got great people to take a Bill Guston handwritten article and turn it into a publishable piece.
That's right.
And that's the way you got to look at it. You can't be everything. And that's, if we got to focus on leadership over management, and there's people that are great managers in the fire service and they're crappy leaders. And there's people people that are phenomenal leaders and crappy managers.
Yes.
Usually there's a little bit of good management in a good leader, but some people can just inspire the shit out of you, but can't accomplish anything.
There's
a few of those.
There's a lot of there's a lot of truth in all of that for sure. And I'd like to think that maybe the focus is starting to come back around a little bit.
It is.
I'd like to think that we're putting more value on the street, on street worthiness than the paper worthiness. Especially when our job is trending younger and younger, volunteer and career. You're seeing a great divide within the volunteer service. You have very old members and very young members, and we don't have those middle generational values that are there anymore. And then on the street in our career departments and our urban settings and so on, you're looking at a much younger profile department. So the focus on actual field experience, we really need to start doubling down on getting those people in positions that they can educate from a I've done it perspective and not its theory, right? Because
100%.
I subscribe to it, Chief. If you haven't done it, it's just theory. You can go train, you can read about it, you can educate yourself, but until you actually push that hall, cut that roof, throw that ladder, it's theory.
Yep. And look at back to those promotions. So even in some places they did it for officers. So you got somebody that came on, and so education was the thing. So instead of them spending time in fire schools and all, they were spending time getting their college work and stuff done. And then they got promoted and they didn't have the ins and outs. And then next they get promoted again. And so that's where the risk averseness comes from. Why on earth would I let somebody get on a roof and cut a hole? That looks dangerous.
That's right.
And you never did it. You never did it. So you don't understand. And you were never inside and saw the effects, or not to say you never did it, but like you don't have, you have the knowledge of it, but you don't have the understanding of how the whole thing works. And now you're trying to make decisions on it. And this profession doesn't work that way. The budget can work that way. You can strategically plan that way and all, but like the leadership on the street and the leadership to set the tone, the mission, and the purpose, they have to understand the job and to be able to make good decisions.
I would agree across the board on all of it, Chief. This is why I wanted to do this today. Truly enjoy the perspective because I think we're cut very similarly in our beliefs and in our love for the job. I want to talk about something else real quick. I kind of want to pivot. You mentioned Bill Guston. Mm-hmm. This year's FDIC was dedicated to him. Never Stop Being a Student. That Paul Combs comic, awesome. with the book out and his glasses, came from a real photo, if I'm not mistaken. It was referencing.
Yeah, actually, I mean, it was we recreated it at FDIC.
Okay.
We had a chair. Most people probably didn't see it. It was up front, right on the aisle.
Right. Okay.
Where he would sit, and we put one of his notebooks. I actually have it right here. We put his notebook, his glasses, and we put a white rose across it as a tribute. Right. And but yeah, I mean, that Paul captures stuff so well, and that was such a good editorial cartoon that showed the true spirit of Bill. And I mean, his influence. I said he was America's captain.
That's right.
You know, he didn't promote. He stayed a captain, and he worked at that station for decades. That one station. So you talk about knowing the community,
right?
I mean, that Joker was he's a
he was
national treasure. Right?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. And I mean, he just brightened everybody's day. He remembered things, and he definitely, to me, embodied the soul of fire engineering.
I love that.
You know, and he never forgot an article. Like he made me look bad, which, you know, it was like, I got so many things going on and stuff. And he goes, what about that article that we did? I believe it was June of, 2000 so-and-so. There was a kid from Orlando that wrote this article, and he'll know who it is. He'll give him a second. And it's like, man, I read every one of them probably 4 times, and I can't remember. My brain's not programmed that, but he was that focused on the study, and he cared so much about each piece that was in there, and he'd be the first one. He sent me a letter after the Pete Rose editorial, and he goes, hey, I didn't even know who Pete Rose was, but let me tell you this story. And he talked about him opening a restaurant and stuff, and then he shared the experience and how the people had their comments about how his attitude was and different stuff. And he goes, so you're right on with your article, and he ended it with this. He goes, aren't we blessed to have fire officers and instructors that aren't like that? That do want to be with the people. They do want to sign your book or sign whatever, and that was what, I was, if you're not familiar with it, I was 8 years old, got a chance to meet Pete. My coach, went to high school with him. We get there. I'm in an Atlanta Braves game, which I was a huge Braves fan. Dale Murphy, Hank Aaron, the whole deal.
Sure, absolutely.
And you know how you get the souvenir batting helmets?
Of course.
So I had 2 or 3 Atlanta ones. I still got them. I wore them in the video. But the only other team I had was the Cincinnati Reds. I love the big red machine, that era, Braves were number 1, but Cincinnati was number 2. And then if Cincinnati was in the World Series, I'm Cincinnati all the way, because the Braves weren't doing anything back then. So I meet Pete Rose, and he's talking up a storm to my coach and my coach's kids and all. And then he gets ready to go. He goes, all right, well, good to see you. I need to get out here and take a little batting practice. And he goes, oh yeah, well, the boys want to, Dave here, he's got I had number 14 written on the back of my helmet.
Got it.
He's got a baseball he wants you to sign, blah, blah, blah. And he says, F you, and walks off.
Wow.
And I'm like, I didn't even know what that was.
Right.
But I just knew we sat in silence right beside the Cincinnati dugout, where we could turn and look in the dugout, because he got us the seats. Pete got us the seats.
Wow.
And we sat there in silence for the first 3 or 4 innings, and nobody talked to anybody. And then finally, one of the kids that was on my team asked his dad, he goes, why wouldn't he sign our stuff? And he goes, he's just having a bad day.
Yeah.
But then you read, over the years, you find out that was pretty, that
was the norm.
Yeah.
I, you think about that, right? I'm thank you for sharing that story. And, that goes right to where my mind goes, is what I said before about who's meeting our people for the first time.
Yeah.
Your exposure, your first time. I mean, it's probably your first time standing at the dugout or on the field or wherever you were. And it was a moment as a child, right? Your first impression. You hear guys that fall in love with the fire service when they were 6 years old because of the red truck screaming down the road, and the guys wink at them or just give them a wave or a toot on the horn. You never know what an interaction will do for someone, how you treat somebody on an ambulance call, how you take a knee and help a kid fix his bicycle. Like all those moments matter. And for you to share that story, I mean, that had to be devastating.
Oh, it's horrible. I never wore that helmet again.
Right.
I still have it.
Ugh.
And I still think he's one of the greatest players of all times, but I'm not too hip on him as a person. He may have changed over the years. I you know, when I was doing the article, I saw he donated to some charities and stuff like that. But yeah, it was, you know, it was the typical don't meet your hero.
And
you know?
Exactly. And what was Captain Gustin's line to you? The last line of it, he said something about in the fire service.
He said, aren't we blessed to have officers and instructors that aren't like that?
Yeah.
And you know, I was standing in the bookstore, and I forget, Silvernell and Ashley were in there with their book. I think the 30 Fires guys, Goldfeder and Lieb were in there and all. And anyway, these young guys came up and they were like, they just looked like,
yes, you
know, and they turned and then they saw me standing there, and I was really looking to see how the books were laid out. Like it was beautiful. They did a phenomenal job. It was all lit up and it was clean, slick lines. Paul did all the artwork, you know, all around. It was just a beautiful display. And there had to be 70, 100 people in there, like some in line for signing books and some just milling around. And these two young guys, they were in their 20s. They kind of like saw me standing there and they froze. And they were like, Chief, we didn't think we'd actually like see you out here in the hallway.
Right.
Like, you're really here.
Yeah.
And I'm
you're
like,
a person.
And I'm like,
you're real.
Yeah. But I don't ever look at it like that, but they look at it like that.
I get it.
And so I spent the next 10 minutes talking to them. And, you know, I mean,
that's it.
One, I enjoyed it because I liked to hear where they were from and what they were doing, what books, why are you looking at that book, you know? And then they asked me, what books would you recommend for a person with 2 years on or whatever? And so I kind of got their interest and, you know, from a business perspective, they probably bought 5 books they weren't going to buy because they had a conversation with me. And guess what? They're going to want to come to FDIC every single year. And it wasn't fake. I didn't do it to sell a book or whatever.
Can't be.
No, you know, I wanted to own a bar at one time, and I wanted to open this bar called Headquarters Bar and Grill. And I wanted to put it right beside our public safety training center. And I planned it out with a guy. I had the menu, the whole deal, and it was going to be police, fire, natural resources. So you had a chief's salad instead of a chef's salad.
Right.
You had, there was something to do with the trigger, instead of chicken fingers, it was trigger fingers, or it was, you know, it was all these things. The coasters were going to look like patches. You know how the waitresses get a good tip, they ring a bell. I wanted to have a button that you hit on the wall, and like the fire truck bar and the cop car upside down, all the lights would flash for 2 seconds. I mean, I went all in.
You're giving away your
somebody
your
do
business
it.
plan here.
Somebody do it. But they were like, well, what part of it do you want to do? Like, you know, I was talking to this guy and I was like, this was 35 years ago or longer. I said, I want to be the guy that walks around
front of the house
and says, how's everything going?
Yep.
Is it good?
100%.
And I want to know their name so that like when Jeremy comes in with somebody and he sits down, I walk up and I go, hey, Jeremy, what's going on? Who's your friend?
Right.
And you're special.
Yeah.
And guess what? Maybe I shoot a little $10 appetizer over to the table.
Of course.
Or I say, hey, you guys drinking beer? This one's on me.
Sure.
Or whatever. And
absolutely.
And now you're part of the family, right? You're part of the culture of my bar. Never did it, but it's the same philosophy. You know,
I've always wanted.
How do you create that in a firehouse?
Yeah. I always wanted to order I always wanted to open a short order breakfast lunch place with like 12 seats at the counter, flat top in front. And you know, everybody that comes in, you already put the eggs on when they come to sit down because you know what they're eating. You know their name,
drink,
you know
the
their
coffee.
kids.
Yes, absolutely.
That to me, I romanticize that all the time about how important that is. And what's incredible to hear, and I'm so grateful. I'm not surprised by any means that this is your demeanor. I'm not. It absolutely makes sense to me. I'm very much the same way. The impact that National Fire Radio has had. I mean, I meet people everywhere I go. And I have to take a minute and shake a hand and say hello, because if you don't, we took on these positions, right? You as the editor-in-chief, me starting National Fire Radio, doing a what I like to consider a successful podcast, social media platform. People get to know us, and they look to us for information. They look to us and believe in what we're talking about, and so on. And so I recognize that, and I take that to heart. And so that every interaction, every person I meet, I want to leave an impression upon them that makes it better. But Chief, I think the only way you do that, and I've really been exploring this a lot lately with myself, because I think what sets myself apart from so many, and I'm sure you're very much the same way, is this is not about any short-term return. This is a long-term play. This is about how many people are going to show up at my funeral, how people are going to talk about me 30 years from now, how my grandchildren and great-grandchildren will talk about me and the impact that I've made in life. That, to me, is so much more important than anything else these days. And so what I do with National Fire, I leave money on the table every single day with everything I do. Relationships, collaborations, all the things I do, I always want to help push people forward. And I think that when you do this for the right reasons, you win. And you win internally, right?
Yep. And you don't always win fast.
No, never.
Right.
Never.
But yeah, you win. Yeah. And that's the thing. How many doors can you open? How many connections can you make?
Yes.
And, that's one thing that I freaking love is like, I introduce people, people pitch stuff to you all the time. Hey,
of course,
I'm thinking about this, blah, 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 blah. And I'll be like, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. And then next thing you know, they're launching a business. And you're like, if you hadn't have made that connection, then that would have never happened. But you're also now you've created, lifelong friends. You've created people who are part of your, fire service is a cult. It's a cult for good, It's not a manipulative.
It's a cult for good when you're doing it for the right reasons.
Correct. There's some that are off the tracks.
That's
for
correct.
Sure, but
100%.
it can be, and it's in culture, right? So if you're in the culture, then it's awesome, and that's the beauty of FDIC, man. The whole industry is there, and it's important to be in a classroom. It's important to be in the bar at night. It's important to be on the showroom floor, because there's just so much imagination, innovation, and networking that goes on. And, pretty much everybody that teaches there has side gigs teaching. Every now and then somebody pops up that's new, but it leads to other things for them. And again, employ your own philosophy. It's like everybody wins, right? So it's like, I don't care that they teach. That was one thing I got right off the bat. I'm like, you guys aren't restricted. Like we have FDIC once a month. And for a while it was kind of frowned upon. Hey, don't go teach at that conference. You're an FDIC guy, whatever. I'm like, you're an ambassador for us.
I love that message you shared last year. I think it was last year or the year before. Yes.
You're an ambassador for us. It's like, I'm paying you. I mean, we're not even paying the speakers. We cover their travel and all that. We do pay the hot guys, but like, it's not a lot. You're not doing it for the money. It's sort of to make it easier for you to tell your wife you're going to be gone for a week and at least cover your beer.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
And it's expensive to bring people in and to put them in $400 a night hotels and all that stuff. But that's not, if they're coming for that little check,
right, then,
they're not going to be there. They're not going to be there long, but we want to see them successful outside. If you have a vendor that's doing this exhibiting, like, we don't need Ginzu knives exhibiting at FDIC.
Right.
That's not our deal.
Right.
Right. I mean, they're not going to get a return on investment.
Right.
So we want your investment in that booth to pay off 400-fold, and you got to look at every single aspect of it that way. And if you're a company officer in the station, how do you, and don't confuse the term fix. You can't fix people. People don't want to be fixed, right? Oh, let's send him over here. That captain will fix him. He'll straighten him out or whatever.
Right.
No, what you want to do is add value to them. What is it? What are their interests? How do you pull them in? How do you make them feel like they're a part? I always say I've been at some firehouses that had 10, 12 people, every shift. And you usually got that one dude that cooks, right? And a couple folks help. Sometimes that cook is your like best firefighter, most adaptable ever. Other times, the only value they bring to that station is they can cook. But guess what? They're valuable.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
So they're part of the team.
Yeah.
They're part of the team. You want a few misfits on your team every now and then, right? You want to fight for a few underdogs every now and then. And
I agree with you. I think the more diversity we have, the different, we want square pegs, round pegs, triangle pegs, right? We want them all.
That's what makes it fun.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
If everybody is the exact same personality, the exact same whatever, it's kind of boring.
Man,
you might execute pretty well on the fire scene, but your dynamic is going to be jacked up because it's all it's too much. It's too much. You need somebody in development. You need a rookie. You need somebody to develop and bring along. You need the guy that's funny as hell. And you need the guy that can fix anything. You need the guy, it's bad news bears.
I have been talking about this recently with so many guys, and I talk about, do we want to go down this road real quick? And then I'm going to let you go.
No, you're good.
I've been talking about my career in the fire service has been a hell of a journey, and it's been so much fun. And I look at the guys that I've been to fires with over the years, and they are every shape and size and personality and ethnicity and culture and you name it. And it is a ragtag group of guys that will go anywhere we need to go. They will go, and listen, these guys might not be doing CrossFit all the time. They might not be eating healthy in the firehouse. Like they don't have tattoos, right? Like all these things. And you look at it's just a band of guys and girls that just mix well, and the mission absolutely matters most. When that bell goes off or it's time to go to work, it's work first, and everybody looks a little bit different, and yet they're some of the hardest chargers I've ever had the pleasure of working with. Yep. And then I worry today, is there a stereotype? Is there a way that so many are starting to look so similar in every way? Mm-hmm. And, I think a lot of it's for the better. Obviously fitness has become a very important factor in the fire service, more so now than ever before. But you're looking at all these guys, they're dressing the part. Do they have the push and the heart to go down that hallway like that ragtag group of guys that we go to fires with? Yep. And that is the one thing that I'm just I don't understand this AI integration that just popped up. Did you see that?
Yeah.
It's weird.
But I just an AI thumbs up.
Yeah. I want to make sure that yes, come to conferences, train, look the part, dress the part. Like these guys, I went to a conference in Alabama a couple weeks ago. Great live fire, some of the best live fire training I've been to in a very long time. And the guys that showed up for training were your group, smoke divers. They're dressed in compression socks and mesh shorts and dry fit shirts, and they're all ready to go. And it's like a sport, right? Like they look like the I don't know, the Syracuse Orangemen ready to go, right? Yeah. Play football on Saturday morning. And when you look at that, you they got it down pat, but we got to still give you that heart and the cojones to go do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And luckily, I think your instructor groups are pretty much, they're kind of the core of that. They get it. And that's never, nothing's 100%,
right.
But there are a lot of those folks that they're doing it because they like to share knowledge. They like to give back. They like to make an impact. There are a few out there that are in it because they want to see how much money they can make or whatever. Sure. But I think the majority are they'll go teach for a place to sleep, or beer money
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. And that's awesome. That's awesome. I mean, everything can't be perfect and structured,
we were sitting around. This has been on my mind a lot because when I look at the instructors sitting around, the guys that are teaching that weekend, and you look at the instructor table, and then you look over at all the guys that came in to learn and to be there, the younger guys, that the look of the tables are very different.
Mm-hmm.
And I love that, right? Because it's they're impressionable and they're ready to learn and they're eager. And then you have this other table of guys that have been doing it for quite a while. They're teaching and sharing their knowledge and experience, and they look very different. And I hope that the respect of why they look very different is allowed to remain, and that we don't need to become this cookie cutter image of what we think we need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that we're kind of, I don't know. I think we're losing track of what matters sometimes in regards to what we're doing.
Yeah.
We got to be careful.
Be fun. Yeah. We need to have fun, and we need to do stuff. I was going to ask you, so I'll flip the switch on you since you're the interview. What was your most fun you had at FDIC this year?
For me, from my perspective, I enjoyed having some freedom this year. For a long time, for the last couple of years, it's been go, working with manufacturers, doing projects there, so on. So from my perspective this year, the year prior, I had 7 people with me that I was managing there, and it was a lot. This year I brought, I was going to bring one guy. He ended up getting hurt a couple nights before on the job, blew out his hamstring. He couldn't come. And so I had another guy, a local guy that I knew that was going to be out there. So he helped me out with some stuff, but I had some obligations with vendors. But other than that, I actually got to enjoy the week of conversations and laughs and catching up with people and talking with vendors. I think FDIC is a special time. Mm-hmm. I think for me, I mentioned the networking earlier and the conversations and getting out. The one thing I noticed this year, though, there were a lot more private parties, and which took a lot of guys off the general streets. And I thought that probably wasn't the best, to be honest with you. I think there's a great mix when you talked about those kids at the bookstore that came and bumped into you there, and the impression you were able to leave upon them and so on. I think the interaction between those that are there to teach hot and teach lectures, they need to have, I think, part of that experience. And I know they want to turn it off too, don't get me wrong, and they want to catch up with their friends. But I also think that when you choose to be in that public eye like that, there's a lot of people that kind of want to bump into you and talk to you or say hello. And I think that part of that is you have, I don't want to say obligation, but I think you should recognize that as the individual that, hey, these, a lot of people came to listen to my class today. I should make myself available, during the conference if people want to bump into me, right? Or have a beer or whatever, right? I think that that's an important part of it. This year, I didn't see a lot of that, to be honest with you. I saw one night of it maybe. Yeah. But other than that, it seemed like things got a little, I don't know.
Private dinner here, private dinner there.
I think so. I think there was more of that this year.
Is we're missing the colada.
Yeah, 100%.
That makes a difference. So we need somebody to buy that and turn it into Headquarters Bar and Grill. I got the menu already planned out.
I got a guy. Are you kidding me?
We've got the menu already planned out.
Yeah.
Would that be awesome?
But it was a great year. And I know for you guys, it was well attended, 37,000+, which I think is a banner year for you guys once again.
Yep, 37,081 to be exact.
That's perfect. Outside of COVID, it really seems that the momentum is moving along.
Yep.
And I think it's great. I do recognize it does become cost prohibitive for many. It's to get a hotel room or even an Airbnb downtown. Is very, very challenging, and so on. So I think there's some hurdles there that, like, for the average person, they might not be able to do it. But I would challenge you this: if the fire service is a lifelong passion, which it is for most of us, I would challenge you once or twice in your life to get there. I do believe that event, it's worth the spend if you can do it. And I think that the caliber of training is great. I think, watching some new faces pop up is exciting. We talked about Bill Gustin, and, he's a staple, and for how many years, right? And we're losing these guys, and who's replacing them?
Yep.
Who's sitting in that front row taking notes? And, I hope to think that we have that next generation coming up. And that's a lot of what I do here with National Fire Radio is finding the next generation of those of people. And I think that truly for me is very rewarding. Is a lot of times I'll put these guys on my show early on because I want to hear who they are. And I'm interested in what they're doing. And then off camera, it's that pep talk, like, keep going, man, keep pushing. You're doing great. Like, I think you're hitting certain targets that are great. And, just keep in mind, I think all of that truly matters. And I think what FDIC does, and it has always done, is it sets the bar very high. And I think the credibility of it is absolutely there. And so those that go can expect a great experience. And I certainly have had one for the many, many, many years that I've been going. But this year was a little bit different. I actually truly really enjoyed my time this year, working the show and so on. So it's been fun.
Me too.
Before
I had a good time. I had a good time on Firefighter Row. That was that was kind of unexpected, because I got a text from Blake, and he goes,
Right.
"Hey, can you come? We're going to start the auction.
Sure.
And can you come and, just send the message out, you're going to be here or whatever." So I got there, and I didn't really know what they wanted me to do. And then I saw the guy up on the ladder, hey,
you were
thing.
fantastic. Do you have a past in auctioneering or what?
No, that just, I used to watch those guys all the time and go to them. And so then they were like, "Here, get up here." And with the megaphone, and it reminded me of my old union days with the megaphone.
Yeah.
But, man, that little spontaneity there, the little, right off the bat. And then we were just selling stuff. And I have to say, it was probably like, it was fun because it was very organic.
Yeah.
It wasn't planned.
Right.
The auction was planned, but
Sure.
like the way it went off wasn't planned. But, I got so into it that one time, and it was like, they were like, "Oh, we don't have anything else." And I was like, "Oh, I got a challenge coin." and then it was just like, let's just see what would happen.
Right.
And so I just happened to pull out, like, I think I had two. One was like a high number, or it was not a super high number, but it was like in the 90s. And I think it sold for like 50, $60. And then I reached in and grabbed another one, and it was like number 4.
Oh man.
And I think that one went for like $150.
Yeah.
Yeah. All going to Blake and stuff. And then I said, "Well, I'm out of shit. How about a hug?" Were you
I know.
there?
I saw it.
Were
I
you
was there. I was there for the whole thing. Absolutely.
And so
Absolutely.
this dude is like $20, and I think it got up to 40.
I think it was
so
$40.
We made like a speckle out of it. I thought that was a fun moment. It was just, it was a good cause, and it was fun, but it was almost like being in the firehouse again for a minute. It was just,
good. You need that.
Yeah,
you need
it
that.
It was good for me.
I want to say, now that I had a little bit of time to think about it, and I'm going to hold up, this is, this is spectacular, right? So like, if you can't see, if you're listening to the audio and not watching the video of this, executive orders. And I want to talk about this real quick, Chief, because, listen, I wasn't going to let these go. You were very generous to bring them down to Firefighters Row and begin an auction to auction them off. And unfortunately, they should have went for a lot more.
Yeah.
Not going to lie.
It was still good.
But it was great. But the one thing I wasn't going to do was let history slip out of my fingers. And to me, being a student of the fire service the way I am, I'm very, very protective of the fire service. I'm very protective of this job. And this is history. These two that I got, and the executive orders. And I want to talk about that real quick, because that was an absolutely wonderful moment in the opening ceremony when you guys decided to bring the table out, sit down, and read off executive orders and sign them. And with your red hat on, and it was it was not a political stance by any means. It was literally having fun.
It was.
And what I loved about it was you were willing to take that chance and to do that.
There was a lot
awesome.
of people. A lot of people were like, I don't know. I actually invited the mayor, invited Ed Kelly.
Yeah.
I wanted them all out there.
Yeah.
And like when I changed the name of Indianapolis to the city of FDIC,
Right.
I wanted to hand the mayor the pen. you know. But they were all, they didn't know how it was going to go. But I prefaced it. I said, hey, look, I don't want to put you in a bad spot.
That's right. Of course.
So I said, this is a little risky, but I said, it's not political. It's just total humor. Yeah. It's on political spin. You know, we're taking advantage of a moment in time.
Of course.
But I said, it's got to come off. And to believe it or not, Jeremy, I didn't think of that till about 30 days before the show. Because
I believe it.
When you're in that, and when you're in that realm, I mean, there's plenty of time to be serious. We started off with Gustin, and so we couldn't do anything at first. Like last year, I came out with a guitar. Everybody expects a little something, you know. Sure. Now they're like, oh, what's he going to do this year? He's going to shoot T-shirts or
T-shirt cannon, right? That was last year. You're throwing into the crowd.
You can't repeat,
right?
You know. So we're sitting at the walkthrough in Indy, and I was like, what if I signed an executive order?
It's cool.
Declaring firefighting is the greatest job in the world, because we've said it for years, but it's not official. And, you know, some of these executive orders they're doing now are somewhat symbolic in some of those, some of those areas. I'm like, I don't
Gulf of Mexico.
Yeah. Yes. I'm like, I said, I don't want this to come across political. And I actually had some comments. Some people actually came up and asked people, they were like, so was he pro-Trump or was he anti-Trump?
Does it
and
matter?
They said exactly.
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, he was neither. He was Saturday Night Live skit.
That was it.
Wasn't bashing anybody, but it was for the fire service. It was like, hey, we can jump on this bandwagon. So
I enjoyed it. I think the whole room really enjoyed it.
Of good comments on that. I think, you know, you're not going to make everybody happy.
No, of course not.
I did get a comment on Facebook. Somebody said, how dare FDIC make light of the current political situation and how the fire service is being decimated. And you know what? I didn't have to say shit because everybody else jumped in.
Piled on.
And the guy who actually posted it said, lighten up, Francis.
Right.
He said this was funny. It was great to see some retired guys up there having fun.
Yeah, the way it should be.
Throwing the pins in the audience.
Without a doubt. Ray's pardon was fantastic. Are you kidding me?
Yeah. So
that was awesome.
Ray got his pardon.
Right.
And as a matter of fact, we took the speech down at the request of several organizations back then. So it got taken down. It's in the it's bootleg out there on YouTube.
Yes, it is.
Pretty crappy quality.
Right.
So I'm actually they're remastering that now, and we're going to re-release it on the fire engineering site, on the FDIC site.
Good.
And we're going to actually put it. It's like, hey, in light of the recent pardon, we're bringing this back out. So Ray got his copy. I sent the mayor the copy of the Indy one and the pen, and then you generously got the other two on the auction for all that went to Blake, right?
Yes, it
all
did.
All that money went to our friends at Next Run.
Yep, and I can tell you this: they will be well preserved and protected here. On top of this, I mean, I have a lot of history here in our offices now, and the one thing that I have that I'm very proud of is I have leather-bound fire engineering magazines from 1944 to 2015. I have the library of it, and that is front and center on one of the shelves, and it's something that a lot of guys in the fire service have come through these doors now in my new facility here and my new location, and they come and they sit. And they look through the old magazines for their original articles. Yep. And it just creates, and I just get to sit there and create this environment of just sharing why this job is still so good. Yep. And I appreciate, a lot of what we talk about, you and I, right, on your platform, my platform, right? Mm-hmm. We talk about things we have to do better. And I don't think we spend enough time talking about how great it actually is.
It is awesome.
And it's moments like signing these executive orders where we can poke some fun at ourselves and show and lead as leaders of the fire service that we can still enjoy this job and it's still worth going all in on. 100%. And we have to make sure that for all the negative we talk about, we talk about the good side of this too.
Way more good than bad. Yep.
Yeah. David Rhodes, I can't thank you enough for joining me today. I know you're a busy man, and it's always fun to have a conversation. It was nice seeing you at FDIC. It was great that to get you back on today. I truly appreciate you and our friendship, and I wish you nothing but continued success with everything that you do.
Same for you, my brother, and hopefully I'll get to run into you in person in Jersey soon.
Well, there is always an open invitation now that we're in our new location.
Yeah, I need to come check it out.
We'd love to have you. So welcome anytime.
Awesome.
Dave, thanks so much, Chief. I appreciate you. Stay right here. I'm going to sign off the podcast. I'll come right back to you, okay? Great. Guys, thanks for tuning in for another excellent episode of the National Fire Radio Podcast. Chief David Rhodes, the editor-in-chief of Fire Engineering Magazine. He needs no introduction anymore. He's crushing it, doing some really good things and bringing a lot of life back to a lot of different channels. I love it. I just love seeing it happen. A fireman for firemen. I love it. Do me a favor. I say this at the end of every single episode, but take this episode, take this conversation, take it back to the firehouse and talk about it, because when we're talking about the job, we're making the job better. We'll see you at the next one. Thanks for tuning in. Jeremy, National Fire Radio.
National Fire Radio.